host, Rob Knorr. Great to be here. Excellent day here. Actually, it was very rainy where I'm at. Power went out in some places. Heard the fire alarm a couple times, so that's must have been some wrecks or some fires here. That's no good. But overall, a decent day for me. Glad to be here with you. We got about an hour today, barring any intrusions. I'm off the clock, but you know how that is. So, got a good show today. These shows that are only an hour, I'd like to try to keep it to one topic. Oh, you know what? I totally screwed up. Does anyone mind? Listen, those few of you that are here, you cool if I end this stream and then try to use StreamYard? Is everybody cool with it? We'll try it tomorrow. We'll ride it out here. We'll just go. I already got it set up today, but I want to try to use StreamYard on my phone, and then it'll stream to X and Rumble as well. But this will be the last day we'll do YouTube only. We'll roll it out here tonight this way, and see if we can go from there next time. But hello everyone. What's up, Max? What's up, Ben? It's great to hear from you, Max. I just now checked my email and I saw you sent me an email. I promise I'll get back to you on that. I'm so bad at checking my emails, so I'll definitely get back to you. But yeah, it's been a day. We're gonna talk a little about the pandemic and some news that's came out about that last week and this week. And yeah, it should be a good show. I know that everyone wants to talk about Trey aren't gonna be here anymore, right? Or whatever they're called. Little Office Space joke for you there. The terror gang that Trump's sent out. Thank you, Tanner S. I appreciate it. We'll talk about that probably tomorrow. So today we're going to try to keep it more towards some news on the pandemic and sort of my general thoughts going around that. Bro, it's 2025. Why are you still about the pandemic? Now, this HN guy that just said that, when I was talking last week about the actual attacks we saw on Tesla owners and on Tesla facilities, he said, bro, how could you talk about that with January 6th? January 6th? Like, how could you talk about current day violence after January 6th? But now that I want to talk about news of the pandemic that's breaking today, he's like, that was a long time ago. And this is similar what you see to these bootlicking establishment types. They lie to you in real time. They take away your rights. They have decisions that are disastrous for you as the individual, the country at large, and in fact the world at large, and then beg you not to go back when more and more evidence of how wrong they were breaks. Beg you. Why are you talking about that? Please don't talk about that. That's like more than 2 weeks ago. Why are you talking about that? And also January 6th. And also Trump's a Russian, like we've been saying since 2016. Sorry, HN. I'll talk about what I feel like. I know people like you that no doubt supported lockdowns, supported the mass censorship of people like me that were correct, and almost everything that we said about the pandemic. I know that you desperately don't want us to talk about how we were correct and what that means, but yeah, one other thing as we get rolling here, as we start. I lied to you all. And said that I would retire this hat. But here's what happened. I did buy a new hat, $2, same hat, except it's black instead of gray. And then I bought the same pair. I got these shoes, these Skechers that I wear. You see they're a little dirty. It was raining today. They are black, obviously, but I bought the same pair in gray. So I'll be gray shoes, black hat now. But unfortunately, we went to my mother-in-law's for the weekend, and we took my wife's car, and I didn't know that those things got taken out of her car accidentally with some of the groceries we had for the picnic and taken into her mother's house. And so I believe my shoes and hat are at my mother-in-law's house. So until I get off work Wednesday or Thursday, it's going to be gray hat. So we still get some time with the old, look at that. Look at those stains. Look at that fire mark there, that little ember burn. So, but I did lie to you all. I said it would be the end. So apologies for that. Thank you to all of you that have donated money that allowed me to buy a new $2 hat, though. I appreciate it. Listen, I find this hat to be, like, maybe this will be gross. I don't know how gross the inside of my hat is, but look, I like the fitted. I like that about it. And then it's sort of like the material. I don't know what it is about it. I like it, though. And it doesn't have any goofy logos or anything on it. So, $2? That's a steal, as far as I'm concerned. I believe I paid $7 for this hat. So when I saw it said clearance, I almost bought like 5 of them. But $10 may have broke the bank, so I let it go. Plus, until Trump eliminates taxes, there was going to be tax, 6% sales tax. I can't even begin to do that math. So one $2 hat. That's what we got there. So so you still get this hat, unfortunately. But let's go. We got about an hour to go, so let's jump right in and talk about the pandemic news. Now, if you follow me on YouTube, which I assume most of you do because you're watching on YouTube now, you'll know that I do shorts that I'm putting up every day at 2 p.m. Eastern time. You should check those out. Not a lot of people are checking them out. Check them out. They're fantastic. Little snippets, 1 to 3 minute snippets into some views I have on certain things. Last week I did a short, and I mentioned it on my live stream because it got struck on TikTok for a community guideline strike. And the reason was because I was talking about COVID coming from a lab in Wuhan. And apparently TikTok, which is based in China, doesn't like you to talk about that Wuhan lab. So today, when I did another video, similarly about that, though a different sort of story, I didn't upload it to TikTok. I thought better of it this time. Oh, don't you just love the censorship games that we have to play on all of these platforms? But hey, I'm still under my 30-day ban for a person coming on my show and yelling homophobic slurs, which they received a 7-day ban on Twitch. So, yay, to be a conservative on social media. Good stuff. Anyways, the video I did last week was about evidence was breaking from Der Spiegel, which is a German newspaper or website, I think it's both, media outlet regardless, that said that German intel told Prime Minister Angela Merkel back in 2020 that the most likely origin of COVID was the Wuhan lab. Now, why was that significant? Because as time goes on, we're seeing pretty much that it was universal for all of the West intel to say, yeah, the most likely scenario was that it came from a Wuhan lab. Today, what my short was about was, I saw this morning when I woke up that newspapers are breaking in the UK that the former head of MI6 in 2020 told Boris Johnson, then in the parliament there, in the UK, that the most likely origin for COVID was the Wuhan lab. We also had evidence that Dr. Fauci was receiving intel that said that the most likely place that it was coming from was the Wuhan lab. That's what they were saying in private. We know that we had intel agencies such as the FBI that said with a moderate likelihood that it came from the lab in Wuhan. And now, today, we had the New York Times break a big story. And it's very similar. It's similar to Jake Tapper's book on, oh my goodness, can you believe we were lied to about Joe Biden's cognitive health? And it's like, right, by you, Jake Tapper, and your network, and your cohorts, and the people you propagandize for in the Democratic Party. That's exactly what's going on with COVID. So the New York Times is coming out and it's like, oh my gosh, shucks, can you believe members of the media and members of the administration and the intel community and politicians and the scientists lied to us, saying it was debunked that this could have came from a lab in Wuhan? Can you believe that? And then they censored? Oh man, right, New York Times, and you were the tip of the spear. One of the New York Times, I think I reposted this out on X, one of the head science writers in the New York Times tweeted out in 2020, someday we'll get beyond this racist trope that it came from a lab in Wuhan. That's what New York Times writers were writing in 2020. That was what was happening. That's what they were saying in real time. Now they're trying to rewrite history. Just like you see Randy Weirgarten, the head of the largest teachers union, saying, we were never for school shutdowns, when they were one of the biggest advocates of it. How many times have you seen me debate people or you yourselves argue with people online when you heard people say, lockdowns? What lockdowns? I don't remember lockdowns. There were no lockdowns. No one suggested that. Everyone said that if there were lockdowns, it would harm the economy. We lived through it. We saw what they were doing. And now they pretend, well, no one said that. What are you talking about? No. No one said, I had a big argument with, no one censored anyone from saying that it came from a lab. That never happened. And I brought up Facebook's actual policy saying, yes, we'll censor it. Well, it's not a big deal. It's not happening, but it was good that it was happening. And okay, you were right, but it was a long time ago and it doesn't matter. Let's focus on something now. Like our friend HN that's in the chat here. Why are you talking about it? It was years ago. That's the mentality that these people have. So I thought it was worth going back, and I think COVID's something that we should look back, I don't know, maybe every day, but let's try at least once a month that we should look back on it, at least on my channel, to remind people of the most grotesque authoritarian abuses I have seen in this country, laying the groundwork for grotesque authoritarian abuses that we will see in perpetuity unless we have success at weeding that out like at least the Trump administration's paying lip service to. All of the horrors that you saw, that you lived through, your life being upended, your children's life being upended, your parents' life being upended, your life being upended, you being called non-essential while they supported people that were breaking the very policies they enforced on you, that were going out and doing things like rioting for Black Lives Matter and Antifa. And what's the excuse now that we have from people? It's time to move on. Let's have COVID amnesty. We all tried our best. We tried our best. New York Times says, oh, shucks. If only there was a media outlet back in 2020 that could have done, I don't know, some investigative work on the origins of COVID instead of just hook, line, and sinker taking what the government was telling them. Isn't that the role of media? When they pat themselves on the back and say, we're the fourth estate, democracy dies in darkness, we hold truth to power. Isn't the implication there that they challenge the powerful so that the average person could get truth? And yet that's never what the mainstream media does. They're always parroting what the powerful say to be propagandists for them. Oh boy, when you have someone that comes in that upsets the apple cart though, like Trump, that's against all of the, as Mike Benz calls it, the blob or the establishment or the deep state or whatever term you want to use for the unending bureaucracy that really runs our government. Now they'll go after Trump. But they're always protecting that bureaucracy. Do you notice that? And then they act like once the cat's out of the bag, whether it be with COVID, whether it be with the Iraq war, whether it be with Joe Biden's cognitive health, they always afterwards are like, oh, we were duped too. Oh, shucks. We're right there with you, America. Oh, shucks. But believe us in our next lie. Believe us when we parrot government talking points this time and say that you're un-American or you're a Russian stooge or spreading Putin's talking points or you want grandma to die or whatever it is, you're anti-American. You have to believe us next time because, yes, you're right. We've propagandized you and been wrong over and over again. But now we've acknowledged, yeah, we too were lied to, so you have to believe us going forward. Bobby C., thank you for the $5. Says, soldiers threatened and punished with UCMJ action for non-compliance, only later to be told, hey, want to come back? Never forget. That's right. Now they desperately need recruitment numbers. They're like, shucks, our bad. Our bad. Over and over this happens. Aaron W., go with $1,000. I bet if you donate 1,000, they'll all hit the like button. I'm just messing with you. But all of these people, how many times have you seen me debate these people? There was a guy, if there's any children watching, I'm going to give you a 1-minute warning and then get them out of the room because I'm going to say something sort of graphic. Stank Jesus for $5. Thanks so much. Says, during COVID, my son was having seizures and I was nearly arrested for trying to visit him in the hospital. F these people. Yeah, we'll talk more stories today about it. So, the horrors that I saw with my personal family, with people I knew, with my professional life. All right, we assume the children have left the room. There was a left-wing streamer that I debated quite frequently back in the day around 2020. His name was Sonsul. I don't know if he still streams. I still see sometimes he posts on X. Sonsul told me that not only was the lab leak story not true, it was debunked. Now, what does debunked mean? Debunked means definitively proven to not be true. Not, there's a better than not chance that's not true. Debunked means there was a claim and we have completely eviscerated that claim. We have shown that it's not true. The Russia collusion hoax was debunked. That's an example of debunking. But something like, did Assad gas his own people? No, that hasn't been debunked. There's credible claims that's not the case, but it's not debunked. Debunked's more definitive. So Sonsul told me it was debunked. This is years ago. He told me that. Years ago, it was debunked. We went through the science, why I said I'm not 100% saying it came from a lab, but both from a coincidental sort of circumstantial evidence, it's overwhelming that it came from the lab in Wuhan. Sort of the first cases were coming right around that area, including allegedly one of the first cases, someone who worked in that lab. The coincidence of this unique virus coming out right near an area that's working on these unique viruses seemed to be a bit too much to swallow. But also the science behind it, furin cleavage sites, all that. We used to debate this stuff all the time back in the day. He said, nope, it's not true. It's all debunked. And what he told me was, and I believe I have this, now, I'm not a sex toy aficionado by any means, so I'm not going to know the specific brands or anything. But I remember, just because of the unique name of it, Sonsul told me, if it turned out it was incorrect, that it was debunked. Not that it ended up being from a lab, but if it wasn't debunked, in other words, if we would later find out, oh, it hasn't been debunked, that he would go live on stream and take a, quote, dragon dildo and shove it up his ass live on stream. That's how confident he was that it was debunked that this came from a lab. Now, it is what most governments and their intels are saying is the most likely scenario. So it has definitively not been debunked. He was saying it was debunked in 2021. So I await for Sonsul to come through with his promise. Sonsul, that's good. Now, clearly, I don't care. I don't want him to do that. Instead, he should give his life over to God, get into a monogamous heterosexual relationship, have children, and stop being a goofy lefty. That would be my preference. Put away the sex toys. HN says, so in other words, you can't prove Sonsul was wrong for sure. Yes, I can. He said it was debunked. That means proven. At the time he makes the statement, at that point, it was proven 100% that it didn't come from a lab. Was it proven in 2021 100% that it didn't come from a lab? Well, if it was, how do you explain the fact that today most Western intel says it most likely came from a lab? So yes, I can 100% prove that his claim was inaccurate. Absolutely. These are the sorts of games that you see these people pull out. I had someone say today, when I brought up, I did my little video on the UK. And their intel saying, someone said, Rob's such a hack because he's like, you notice, he's alluding, he's saying that this was a bioweapon that was manufactured and intentionally released. Where did I say that? Where did I ever say that in any of my videos? Where did I say it in my video today? And then I don't even address fucking fools like that anymore on places like X. Fuck them. Just trolls looking for engagement farming. I don't give a shit. But someone correctly pointed out, where did Rob say that? Well, he said that well, it was all about control, and they hid that it came from his lab. Yes, they hid the origins of COVID because they saw an opportunity. It could very well have been an intentional release. My gut feeling is that's not the case, though. I always thought that what happened was that the United States was funding this lab that was working on making COVID more lethal, doing gain-of-function testing on it, and it had escaped the lab. And once it did, two things occurred simultaneously. One, they couldn't own up to it because all of the world would be super fucking pissed that the reason that their lives had to be put on hold for like 6 months to 2 years was because of them monkeying with shit. They caused the problem. So they had every incentive to say, no, it came from a wet market. Tanner S., thanks for the $5. He says, I always thought it was obvious it came from a lab. Love your stuff, Rob. Thank you, Tanner. Yeah, it was obvious that that was the most likely scenario. I was open to hearing evidence to the contrary, but that was always the most likely scenario. But the second thing is, I say this all the time, not everything's a false flag. Not everything is intentionally set up. Sometimes terrorists are terrorists. Sometimes mass shooters are mass shooters. Sometimes hurricanes are just hurricanes. Shit happens. It does. And it's no one's fault. But what the people that run our country and people that run the world are excellent at doing is taking advantage of crises. So they have goals and agenda. And most of the time that doesn't align with what your goal and agenda is as an average citizen. For example, they want more wealth and power for their donor class. So if something comes up and they say, we could use this for more power. They wanted Donald Trump out of office. This came in. Oh boy, here's a good opportunity. Gave them more power, more control over people. Allowed a transfer of wealth from the poor and working class to the upper class. Allowed them to censor people. Lay the groundwork for internet censorship that would further be used to make sure that it was harder to criticize them. None of that is it necessary for this to have been an intentional bioweapon leak. Again, I know some people suggest this was an intentional bioweapon leak. I don't think that's the case. Hypothetically, it's within the realm of possibility, but it's irrelevant to the arguments I'm making. Similarly, I've never been in the camp that I think the vaccines are intentionally created to kill people. I've never thought that. I thought that the vaccines probably were just incredibly rushed and they didn't give a shit about safety or effectiveness. It was a chance to make huge amounts of money by the pharmaceutical companies. They said, oh, great. I don't think that they sat down and pre-planned a biological attack intentionally being released and then created a vaccine with the intent to kill people. That is not what I believe. Is it within the realm of possibility? Possibly. But that's not my argument. You're welcome to make that argument. It's not what I believe. I believe that they were like, oh shit, here's a chance to make a shitload of money. Let's rush this shit out. I also believe that they intentionally, Pfizer, for example, intentionally didn't say how close they were to releasing a vaccine until after the results of the 2020 election. We know that a lot of their alleged testing had been finished before voting in 2020. But remember, the Democrats were the ones casting shade on the vaccine at first. Remember Joe Biden saying, I wouldn't trust a Trump vaccine, would you? Kamala Harris was saying similar shit. And then immediately, they were like, it's being rushed. It'll never be ready in the time frame that Trump's suggesting. And then almost immediately, after the election, it was like, oh, the Democrats were like, yeah, the vaccine's done. And not only is it a good thing, you should have to take it. We're going to force you to take it. But that's the rewriting of history that people want to do. Now, why does this point about the lab origin of COVID matter so much? One, it matters quite literally on what our response to COVID would have been. Because if this came from a lab, then at the very onset of the virus being released, we would have been starting from a point of knowing more about it than had it just regularly mutated in the wild. It doesn't mean we knew everything about it, but there would be a wealth of knowledge in this lab. What exactly did you do to get to this point? Which would have meant it would have been more effective to come up with initial strategies on how to deal with it. Now, at the end of the day, would those strategies have been much more effective or not? It depends on if the intent was to actually help people and mitigate the damage as much as possible, or if the intent was to lock everyone down and have a large transfer of wealth and power to the powerful. But hypothetically, at a time where we're being told, oh, we just don't know shit, so we're going to lock everyone down and blah, 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 it would have mattered had we been aware of that information. But the bigger reason that this story matters isn't even just that. It's the cover-up. It's the fact that it once more illustrates to you how governments around the world worked in tandem with media outlets and with social media outlets to not only lie to you, but to actively punish and censor you if you spoke up about those lies. It happens to be on this particular issue, which to many people, particularly in the United States, would be the most grotesque example of government authoritarianism and overreach that they have ever seen in their lives. This is probably the most, other than specific individual situations like if you're at Ruby Ridge or some shit like that, the most that most people have seen government intervention affecting them since the Vietnam draft. You couldn't go to work. You couldn't go see your family. You couldn't see your friends. You couldn't have a funeral for your parents. You couldn't have a wedding for your daughter. Your kids couldn't go to school. They couldn't go to their senior prom. They couldn't play sports that they've worked their entire high school career. They couldn't do concerts that they worked their entire high school career. Generation of young people missed out on those important benchmarks. Couldn't go to church, absolutely. Meanwhile, the people that were allied with the establishment, such as Democratic politicians, they could do whatever they wanted. And you could do a bunch of secular bullshit, like you can go to the casino, you can go to the liquor store. You couldn't go to the local mom and pop hardware store, but you can go to Home Depot. The farmer's market where you like to go to get fresh produce that doesn't have all sorts of bullshit in it, you couldn't go there, but you can go to Walmart to get your groceries. And all the while all of these double standards are going on, they're lying to you. They're blatantly lying to you about the origins of the pandemic. And we know they are. Now the evidence is coming out. Their intel was telling them. It wasn't as if they were saying, yeah, it could have came from a lab. We don't know. We still don't have proof. They were saying, it's definitive that it didn't come from a lab, and you're racist for suggesting it, and you should be censored on social media. That's what they said. And they did that. They did censor you. By the way, that laid the groundwork for them then censoring people post January 6th. We're going to censor people that say there were problems with the 2020 election. And make no mistake, if you look at the Twitter files and other things like that, and you can see the U.S. government institutions and NGOs that were funded by your tax dollars pressuring social media to censor people that were correct on the pandemic. But they're still doing that now. Another story that broke today. You remember when I debated Connor, and then also I was talking about this in my stream, about how the National Endowment of Democracy, which we pay for our tax dollars, was publicly writing, pressuring Poland to arrest the PIS party that was the party that was in power before the current party? And one of the reasons it said to arrest them was because they pushed for mail-in voting during the pandemic. You remember that? Well, now we find out that one of the heads of the PIS party just died. They were interrogated for 4 hours and their lawyers weren't allowed to be there. Apparently, her side is claiming it was a brutal interrogation. And then 3 days later, she's dead. Poland, the government of Poland, is obviously denying it, but threatening legal action on people that say that interrogation had something to do with her death. You see, Just like in the UK, you could be locked up for jokes and free speech. Just like in Germany, you could be locked up for free speech and they're censoring people online. Just like in the EU, they're threatening to sue companies like X, social media platforms, if they don't allow them to censor disinformation. Where did the groundwork all start? It started with Russia collusion and Brexit, but it really reached its apex with COVID. That's when the government, everybody was sufficiently scared shitless. Everyone was miserable. Oh my God, I can't go to work. I can't go to my parents' funeral. I can't have a wedding for my daughter. Oh my God, this pandemic is so seriously. And the government's like, yeah. And you know whose fault it is? These pricks on social media that are questioning us. They must be silenced. Look at how much pain we're all going through, and it's because of them. Remember? If they lied to you about that, what else would they be willing to lie to you about? Four years from now, if it's like, yeah, it turns out actually Zelensky did kill Gonzalo Lira. Oh well. Yeah, it turns out there were a lot of weapons that were sent to Ukraine that were given to terrorist organizations. Oh well. Yeah, it turns out that there actually was a lot of the Zelensky government before Russia invaded attacking Russian-speaking people in the east and in Ukraine. Oh well, we're on to the news story. And HN will be here when I'm talking about it 4 years from now, a little more gray, hopefully wearing a black hat. HN will be like, that was 4 years ago. Why are we talking about that now? That's where they'll all be. That's so long ago. Why are we focused on that from 4 years ago? Meanwhile, January 6th, oh my God, January, we have to keep talking about January 6th. That's where they'll be. You can see them do this in real time. Egg prices, they shouted 2 days after Trump was sworn in. Egg prices, it's all Trump's fault. How? What did he do in like a week that caused egg prices? So egg prices. Okay, now they're going down. Huh? What's that? Huh? What? Now it's stock market. If the stock market comes up, it'll be the next thing. It doesn't matter. They just talk shit. Everything is the biggest story in the world that shows how horrible, evil Trump or anyone that questions the establishment is. And then it doesn't matter how many times those people are right. It's like, wow, that was yesterday's news. We've moved on. FISA warrants. Remember I read to you last week when I was home? I read to you what I was writing October 23rd, 2017 about how if the dossier paid for by Hillary's team was used to get FISA warrants, it was the biggest political scandal in the history of this country. Everyone laughed at me then. Ha, come on. There's no way they used that dossier to get FISA warrants. And then it was, well, okay, they used them, but that wasn't what was the key part of getting it. And then it was, okay, that was the key part, but clearly they verified all this information before they got it. And then it was, well, of course they didn't verify it. That's why they had to get the warrants in the first place, to attempt to verify it. And then it was, okay, well, yeah, they lied to get that FISA warrant and they changed evidence to say the opposite of it. But that was just for expediency. It wasn't because they were doing it. And okay, you proved that they were biased. Okay, they were biased. They were saying #resist and we needed an insurance policy to stop Trump. But still, it was just expediency. Anyways, that was a long time ago. What do you want to do about it? Let's move on. Same with COVID. I don't know how many times I was right on COVID. From the origin, again, what did I say? Go back. I always said, it's not 100% proven, but it seems when you look at the scientific evidence and when you look at the circumstantial evidence that it is most likely, in my estimation, that it came from a lab in Wuhan. I'm open to hearing arguments to the other. And the arguments to the other side were, there were some people that were making a scientific claim, but mostly it was, shut the fuck up, you should be censored. How dare you, you're racist. Look at all the people from Nature magazine, all these virologists that signed a letter, 51 of them or something that signed a letter that said, nope, it's been debunked that it came from a lab. Turns out that was written by this guy, Peter Daszak, who was working for EcoHealth Alliance, who was one of the people getting the grants and getting money to the Wuhan lab from Dr. Fauci. So Fauci's the one setting the policy that in private's hearing, yeah, it looks like it came from a lab, that's publicly telling everyone it's racist to say it came from a lab. Peter Daszak's the one who orchestrates all the scientists to write the letter that says it couldn't have came from a lab. Meanwhile, his job is where he was getting money from Dr. Fauci's organization to send to the lab in Wuhan. And those are the two people we're listening to telling us, oh, you're fucking racist. You should be censored if you're saying this came from a lab. But trust them when they move on to the next thing. I said lockdowns would be a disaster. They're necessary. They're going to save lives. We have to do them. What do you want, grandma to die? They said. How'd that work out? How many times did I say, starting back in like April of 2020, there are I have a broken fucking record on it. People that have watched me since then are going to be like, here we go. Rob with the same old bullshit. There are 3 things that could really harm this country under COVID. The first is the disease itself. I don't know how many people it could kill. Originally, I said it could kill 1,000 to 100,000. It could kill 1,000 to 1,000,000. I don't know. I have no idea how bad it'll be. But the truth is the United States will overcome that. The next thing is the reactions to COVID. Lockdowns, forced medications, etc. Tay Nublet, thanks for the $5, says, but Rob, don't you understand how many people would have been in on it? Right. It couldn't have happened because how many people would have had to lie? There you go. How many whistleblowers spoke up in 2020 when we find out that German and UK intelligence was saying, looks like it came from a lab. United States intelligence was saying, it looks like it came from a lab. People personally contacting Dr. Fauci were telling him, looks like it came from a lab. But where were the whistleblowers? Where were they? Well, but it was such, that's a conspiracy. It would require so many people covering it up. And yet it happened. That's a great point, Tay Nublet. The second thing that could harm the country or the world was the reaction to it, the lockdowns, forced vaccinations, etc. And I said, we'll be dealing with the ramifications from things like lockdowns for the next 10 years. The economic devastation will be immense. It will far outweigh the impact of the disease itself. But we'll still be able to survive as a country, even though it'll be worse. And we'll deal with it for a decade, if not longer. But the thing that our country wouldn't be able to survive is if we set the precedent for giving up our rights in such a stark way, just because the government says, trust us, we have to do this. And if we accept that, that will be the end of the country because the government will never stop doing that. And now we find out. What do we find out? They were just blatantly bullshitting us and lying as they stripped our rights away. Forcing us, we no longer had the freedom to associate. We had to stay in our homes. They censored us online. And it was all bullshit. I missed a super chat. Let me see if I can get to that. Bobby C for $5. Thanks so much. Says, can we pay your editor to splice together these position shifts with timestamps from the lefties so we can see it in real time? Talk to Black Elk, man. I'm sure if you send him money, I'm sure he'll try to do whatever you want with it. Thank you, Andy. I appreciate it, man. How about school lockdowns? Who was right about that? How about vaccine mandates? Who was right about that? All of these issues, you were just brushed aside. And now the people that were wrong, they want to pretend they were never wrong. It's the same as like the Iraq war. It's the same in Libya. It's the same in Syria. It'll be the same in Ukraine. It's the same in Afghanistan. The same people that told you, trust us, if you elect Trump in 2016, the world will be on fire. And then we had 4 years of relative peace. Black Elk's probably not here right now. I think he works during the day. He gets off at like 8, 9 o'clock. They never have to answer for where they were wrong. How many times have I debated people? Did you support the lockdowns? Yeah. What evidence were you looking at the time that made you want to support lockdowns? What was the evidence that you were looking at? It was studies. What studies? Oh, that's awesome, Grid. That's cool. What were the studies? Because remember, my stance was always this. You can have whatever opinion you want. For example, you're allowed to have an opinion that vaccines are the best to fight COVID, or that they're the worst and you should never take them. And yes, we could say someone who had an opinion that ended up being right or wrong is one thing. But if you said, don't take the vaccine, and then someone listens to you and doesn't, that level of you being culpable for that decision is vastly different than you saying, take the vaccine, oh, and I'm going to make the government force you. I'm going to vote for and cheer for the government forcibly locking you down. Suggesting you do something is one thing. And I'm not saying that you can't criticize people that suggest you do things that end up being bad advice. And this runs the gambit from online streamers. Whether it be giving you bad health advice, some of these, Liver King telling you eat raw liver or some shit like that. I don't know. Or it could be financial advice. People that will say like, oh, you should invest all your money in crypto or something, and then you lose all your money. I'm not saying there's not criticism to be had there, but that's a different level of culpability than you should be forced through government fiat and government authority and power to have to take a vaccine. Now, personally, my opinion on vaccine was always, again, I'm going to sound like a broken record. I thought that the vaccine probably made sense for some people and didn't make sense for other people. For example, there was obviously there were going to be significant side effects for a new medication like that. So you have to weigh the unpredictability of that medication, the side effects that we're aware of, etc., versus the risk you were at of contracting a serious case of COVID. So if you're 80 years old with COPD and asthma, then maybe it makes sense to take this vaccine because your health profile is such that you have a lot of comorbidities, and if you get COVID, it could be very serious for you. But if you're Kyrie Irving, if you're Novak Djokovic, the tennis player that they tried to force taking the vaccine, these are amongst the most fit, healthy people in the world. It probably doesn't make sense for them to take it, let alone to be forced to take it. But I could be wrong, which is why my advice was always, if you're looking for health advice from a fat, out-of-shape piece of shit like me, you're already making a huge mistake. Find a doctor that you trust, give your unique health situation to them, and make the decision that's the best you're capable of. That's my advice. My advice is I just don't know. I'm not comfortable giving you health advice like that. I know what I did. I know what my family did. And it's none of y'all's business. People say all the time, why won't you say whether or not you had the vaccine? Because 10 years from now, when they're rounding up people that haven't had the vaccine, and a bunch of right-wingers are on there announcing on social media, I never took the vaccine. It's like guns. Notice you never hear me talk about if I own guns, what type of guns I do own, if I would own guns. Why would I do that? Maybe the particular type of gun I own, or some of the guns I own, if I own any, will someday be outlawed by the government. I would like not to be on record saying that I own that gun. None of your business. That's why I always ask people, are you vaccinated? You don't have to tell me. It's your private business. .50 cal? Maybe. I will say this, though. My father-in-law owns a gun shop, so I'm here giving advice in an indirect way. And what's the indirect advice that I'm giving? Go ahead. So I'm giving advice, great take, in an indirect way. Go ahead. Explain what that advice is and exactly how I'm going about it in an indirect way. By all means. Did I tell anyone not to take the vaccine? Nope. I said, make your own mind up. Maybe you're right. I have my opinions. You have yours. You should probably consult a medical professional that knows your specific situation. But go ahead. Tell me, is that the advice you're saying? I guess I'm giving that advice. Don't listen to me. Talk to a professional. Yeah, I guess you're right. I've given that advice pretty directly. These pieces of shit that you see, these contrarians, these establishment bootlickers like HN and this guy in the chat that want to be critical of this, all of this is to cover up. I'll guarantee these fuckheads in real life were the biggest fucking bootlicking. Yeah, I saw my neighbor was outside. I'm calling the police. I'm calling the police. They're violating restrictions. They're violating them. They should be forced to be vaccinated. Get them. Lock them down. Lock them down. And then 4 years later, why are you talking about COVID? That was so long ago. And when you say that people should talk to doctors and make the best decision themselves, that's you indirectly giving advice. Yes, we know. We know that the fuckheads like you that weren't just giving advice, but that were actually wanting the government to force things upon people, you want to run deflection for that any way possible. We get it. Where did I say consensus? Met consensus. Who are you talking to? How's that straw man that you've built in your head? Met consensus. Met consensus. You mean the consensus I'm saying now that we were lied to, that the intel agencies knew that this most likely came from a lab? Wagira, thanks for the $20. Says, I hope you own your own gun shop in 10 years, Rob. Cheers. Thank you. Maybe I will. Who knows? Where did I say consensus? Explain the argument, the great take. Where was that I said consensus? Right. I hope you have a great day. Whoa, you indirectly gave me advice to have a great day. That's who these people are. Oh, very well. Great take. If you're not talking to me, fine. Sorry, I apologize then. I'm still waiting for you to tell me what the indirect advice that you were criticizing that I gave to people was. Does Courtney have any good chicken marinade recipes? Yes, she makes something, she calls it grandma chicken. I don't exactly know what the marinade is, but it has a lot of Italian dressing in it. All of these things that we were right about. What was it? What was the evidence that people that wanted lockdowns that they were looking at? Nothing. They just heard Fauci say it was important and grandma would die if you didn't listen to him. I said over and over again, I was like, here's how this will end. It's non-falsifiable. That's how it'll end. I said this in like April of 2020 when lockdowns, when it was 15 days to slow the spread. I was like, here's what's going to happen. They'll have lockdowns and then you'll say, once the obvious devastation comes from the lockdowns, the emotional devastation, the psychological devastation, the economic devastation, the real physical devastation, because there were a lot of people not going to hospitals and stuff for other things, elective care that was being put off, that was harming people. I said, what they'll ultimately say when you ask for proof, okay, how many lives were saved? They'll say, well, we don't really know. I called it Schrodinger's lockdown. If in April of 2020, we locked down the country and then there's only 10 cases of COVID, do you think for a second they would have said, oh, I guess COVID was massively overblown. The lockdown was a huge mistake. No. They'll say, see, the lockdown saved us. But what if we have millions of cases of COVID with their lockdowns? But for a second they say, nah, you're right, lockdowns didn't help. It just caused a bunch of economic devastation. No. They would say, see, we were right to do lockdowns because of how serious COVID was, and it would have been way worse if we hadn't. So how will we decide how many lives were saved? What will we do? You could look at areas that had lockdowns versus areas that had less lockdowns. So then you'll be like, oh, look at Sweden. They didn't lock down nearly as much. They had pretty much zero lockdowns. They have less excess deaths than all of these other countries around them. Now, that doesn't count because Sweden's a different type of system. That doesn't count. Okay? Let's compare Florida to New York. Florida got criticized. We were told it was going to be the forever purge. There was going to be bodies on the street, we were told, because DeSantis was lifting lockdowns way too early compared to New York that famously did lockdowns far more strict. So we would expect to see the death rate to be way higher in Florida than New York, right? But now they're pretty much near the same. Now you can't compare that. It's two different climates. So then, how do we decide? Go ahead and ask someone. Someone says, well, I don't save lives. Okay, how? What metric are you using to decide that? Well, there's this paper that said that. Well, really, what was the methodology of that paper? What? The same people that told you that the lockdowns were necessary and that they wouldn't harm the economy and that it shouldn't come from a lab in Wuhan. It didn't come from a lab in Wuhan. They're saying the lockdowns were good. Why would you believe? By the way, right? How much of shit coming out of academia that the scientists tell us is just complete fabricated total bullshit, just like the experts in Nature magazine that told us it couldn't have came from a lab in Wuhan. Audio's wonky. There's nothing I can do about that. It might be because there's a bad thunderstorm. Okay, I think that probably because I'm using 5G, I think probably the weather's probably having an issue. So we'll be wrapping up in the next 10, 15 minutes anyway. So all I can do is try to power through it. Anyways. If they lie to you about that, do you think they're telling the truth when they say, actually, almost no money is being spent on illegal immigrants? They commit far less crime, and they're so good for the economy. I just was reading today, Gavin Newsom's requesting $3.2 billion because of the deficit they ran out in providing health care, because it turns out in 2024, when he boldly announced that they were giving free health care to illegals, that cost $9.2 billion. But all the studies, all of them say, every time you debate, oh, no, the illegals. Is it that bad, by the way? If it's that bad, I'll just end it. Someone let me know if you can make out what I'm saying or not. Because there's no sense keeping you poor people here to... It's not bad, okay. I don't think I'm strong enough. Anyways, it's all bullshit. They just lie to you over and over. And by the way, people have watched me. I'm in the middle of the road on the Israel debate. I think Israel has way too much influence in our country. I don't think we should be giving them a fucking dime. I think that it's absurd that oftentimes both the Republicans and Democrats will jump in to have laws about hate speech and shit, but it's just that one issue, just Israel. That's the only time people give a shit. But at the same time, the people that are like, everyone that ever disagrees with anything, it's just because they're a Zionist. It's the Jews. I think that gets ridiculous. People go too far with it. But, and I think he was a bad guy. He was the worst in World War II. Don't get an argument from me there. But given that we're living through revisionist history, like within 2 to 3 years, like the New York Times today saying, oh my God, we were lied to about COVID origins. When they were one of the people purveying that lie. How can you trust any fucking thing that we know about the past? If they can change history in a year or two. It's Trump's fault, yeah. Thanks, Trump. It's such a black pill for me. Like, even like something as simple as like, how many weapons have we sent to Ukraine? How many people have died that are Ukrainian versus how many people have died of Russian? Who's advancing or doing better in the war right now, Ukraine and Russia? How the hell can you believe anything? I know this. Ukraine, the West, the United States have every incentive to lie to us to push their narrative. And I also know that Russia and their allies also have every incentive to lie to us to push their narrative. How do we know how many illegals are in this country? All right, the audio's screwing up, so hopefully we have better luck tomorrow. So I do apologize for audio issues, but I'll get out of here now. Thank you to everyone that watched today. Sorry, I appreciate those of you that have powered through. Yeah, great take. You shouldn't just trust Trump. You shouldn't just trust the Doge numbers. In fact, Trump's very good at saying, I'm going to drain the swamp. Did he last time? Did he in 4 years? Oh, the audio's good now? Okay. Yes, you shouldn't trust anyone at just face value. Getting better audio than I'm leaving. That's absolutely true. I still have significant questions and problems with this Khalil guy that seems to have been deported for what's tantamount to speaking his mind. Now, do I think that our government should have the right that people that are guests in this country, that if we think that they are anathema to this country, they're breaking the laws, they're saying death to America and shit like that, we could say, hey, get the fuck out of here? Yeah, we should have that right. But what exactly did he do? It seems pretty nebulous. Well, he was supporting pro-Hamas groups. And if you can't see how that'll lead to a dangerous precedent, all of a sudden, Peter Hitchens comes over and says, actually, I think that Zelensky's a bad dude. Oh, that's pro-Russian talking points. You're deported, Peter Hitchens. I know he's not a citizen. I understand that. I'm not making the argument with citizens. I am saying that I'm also not okay with deporting people that have a green card because the president says, I don't like you. I would not want Joe Biden to be able to deport everyone that said, hey, we didn't like lockdowns. Fuck you. I don't like you. See you. Anyone that's got a green card, see you later. Would you like that? All of those that are saying, but Khalil's not a citizen. Would you be cool with that? If we deported everyone that was in this country that wasn't a citizen that said, I think lockdowns are a bad idea, would you be cool with that? Would you say, hey, they're not citizens, fuck them. They're going against the official narrative of the U.S. government. Well, again, if he's doing more than that, then the case needs to be made specifically what the threshold was that he passed that was more than just him saying, I think Israel's bad, I think that there was genocide, I think that Hamas is right to fight back. Weird sound in the background. Again, it probably has more to do with the 5G and the thunderstorm. But all I'm saying is I want clarity on those sorts of things because I have a distrust of people in positions of power that are suggesting using that power against people for things like speech. I agree that the country should be strict with people that are outsiders. But again, what does that mean? We both agree with that, but who gets to decide what's the thing that's strict? Oh, you criticized our COVID policies? Well, the government should be strict with people that are outsiders. Get the fuck out. And then you know that it's only a short time from that to, we already kicked people out that said that lockdowns were bad. So maybe we should just censor people for saying it, even here in the States, even if you're a citizen. I mean, we're already kicking people out because it's so dangerous to say that. Just saying, be careful what you wish for. I disagree with you, Andrew. I think that you'll see that this will quickly be used. But nonetheless, that's just a little complaining about Trump here today. COVID shit. By the way, we'll talk about this real quick. Why else does COVID matter? Well, here's just ways it affected my brother who had terrible seizures to the point where he would routinely have these seizures and fall and break his collarbones. Both sides, he broke his collarbones. Oftentimes when he would start having big episodes of seizures, they'd come in like 20-minute spurts. He would have a seizure really bad for a long time, and then he would be good for an hour or two, and then have another seizure. So my mom took him to the hospital, the local hospital that's closest to them. The hospital was completely empty. At that point, there had been 0 cases of COVID in that went through that particular hospital, rural Pennsylvania. My mom thinks she's basically going to be with my brother all day in the hospital. Usually they keep him overnight. So she walks in with them. They say, nope, we can't have guests here. Just wait. So she thinks she'll wait in the parking lot all night. To her surprise, about a half hour later, he comes walking out of the hospital. What are you doing? They usually keep you overnight. They're worried about COVID, so they sent me home. So on the 20-minute drive back from the hospital, he has another seizure. He's seatbelts on, and he starts choking himself. The seizure's so bad. So my mom pulls off the side of the road, opens the car door, unbuckles his seatbelt. He flops out onto the ground, breaks his collarbone again. He was scheduled for brain surgery, which they had to keep putting off. The brain surgery for the terrible seizures that he was having. They had to keep putting it off. Why? Because he couldn't have elective procedures like that during COVID. That's just his story. One little way that affected. How about my job working with adults with autism and other developmental disabilities? I can't tell you how heartbroken it made me to see so many of these people that I care for whose lives were completely shattered. And I mean shattered. Because a lot of people that I take care of that have these sorts of disabilities, by a long shot, the single most important thing to their lives are their relationships. Relationships with family, relationships with friends, routine, very important. And all of it, just like that, stripped away. I had one gentleman that liked fishing. Now, when we go fishing, we go to a very, what's the word I'm looking for? Remote area. There's almost never anyone around. It's not the best fishing hole. There's fish there. We catch fish. But there's way better places. But we choose this one specifically because we have social anxiety, and we don't like crowds, and we don't like other people, and we like to be alone. So you're basically on the side of this stream with no one within 2 miles of you either direction. We can't do that. For like 2 years. Can't do it. Why? Because you could bump into someone and get COVID. They tried to tell us at one point that even at home, you had to have your mask on because we work in the individuals' homes that have these disabilities. But because by the very nature, there's always at least 2 people in the house, the staff like me and the person you're taking care of, they're like, you have to have masks on unless you're sleeping. Do you know the damage that does? Not just respiratory-wise, but relationship-wise? And then most of the people you're taking care of, they don't understand. Like, the concept of germs and stuff are very difficult to explain. What's like the flu? But what's the flu? What's like these little germs that make you sick? But what's germs? Well, it's invisible stuff that you can't see, and you should shower every day, and sometimes you have to take medicine to try to keep these germs off you. How many times I heard this, it was heartbroken. Nah, buddy, we can't go see your mom because, that disease is still out there. I'm sorry. I'll do better. And you're like, yeah, you didn't do anything wrong. It's not your fault. Now try having that conversation 2 years. For 2 fucking years. As you watch people deteriorate. I knew a guy in 2022. I was talking to a guy at a gathering I was at. And we were talking about how he was having a difficult time with his mortgage and shit because he was laid off for months because he was non-essential. And he was like, well, the worst part's my mom. And I was like, what's up with your mom? And he's like, well, she has Alzheimer's. She's been real sick. And she's in the nursing home in the local town. And I was like, oh, yeah, it's pretty tough. For a couple months there, you probably weren't able to see her. He's like, a couple months? I'm still not allowed to go. It's been 2 years. I was like, what? He had to stand outside the fucking window outside to see his mom 2 years later. Because it was the policy of that particular nursing home. Imagine that. How many people's loved ones died alone, scared. And all the while these fuckers were laughing. They're going to the French Laundry to eat. They're going on their vacations. They're lying to you, censoring you if you question their bullshit that they know they're lying to you about the origins of it. You could say sounds like a stretch. That's what happened. All this shit occurred, and then you have people like HN that come in here. That's a long time ago. It's time for COVID amnesty. We all did the best. Did the best we could. Again, people think that I was super duper right wing. Vaccines will kill everyone. I wasn't that guy. What'd I say about masks? I'll be honest with y'all. I wore a mask all the time because I had to for my work. I had a choice. I could quit. I didn't want to quit, so I wore the mask. I said, listen, if you go into a store and they ask you to wear a mask, wear the fucking mask. Or say, okay, see you later. But if you go into a store and see people not wearing a mask and you throw a fucking fit, hey, the law says that guys have a mask. Go fuck yourself. Leave. I had a friend I saw post on Facebook. It was like, I went into this restaurant and they weren't wearing masks and oh my God, I freaked out and was like, you could kill it, like you're making my food and you're not wearing a mask and you could spread this disease and it could kill me and blah, 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 blah. And then the last sentence was, this is the third time it's happened this month. And it's like, dude, if you were literally afraid of dying, stop going to that fucking restaurant. Right? It's almost like you just want to bitch. You just want them to be punished. I had another friend. We were playing computer games via Discord. And at this point, I think the regulations were like you weren't supposed to have more than like 5 or 10 people in your house, whatever. And we had people over. We had like 11 people at our house or some shit, but we're playing this game with other friends online. I think it was like these Jackbox games. And apparently, one of the people that were in one of these other houses flipped shit because it was like, what's your friend there doing with multiple people in his home? Like more than 5 people. That's bullshit. They lied to us. The authoritarian. Let's not forget, Democrats polled at 50% or so said that you should be placed in holding, like medical holding, if you weren't vaccinated. 1/3 of Democrats, something like 28%, said if you have children and you didn't take the vaccine, the children should forcibly be removed from your home. According to a YouGov poll. And these are the people today that are like, oh, but it's authoritarian to kick out this dude on a green card for bitching about Israel. I already gave my opinions on potential problems I have with that. But I'll tell you right now, if you're one of the people that were for lockdowns or for forced vaccinations, fuck you. I don't want to hear you talk about other people's rights. Go fuck yourself. It's clear as I can make it. Fuck you, you little fucking brown shirt authoritarian. You've lost the right to bitch about rights. Remember when Arnold Schwarzenegger said, screw your rights? Right? There you go, Captain, my captain. You got it. You can't, I don't know how to fucking, do you see how shitty these people are? Do you see? I just got done arguing with the majority of my audience, like, look, I don't think just because you're on a green card, you shouldn't have a First Amendment right. There should be a level of threshold that if you're like death to America, shit like that, as a guest here, we should kick you out. But I have problems with this because I can see how it could quickly get out of control. And so I'd like some clarification on what's going on. Then I say, but the people that wanted to take your children from you, if you didn't take a vaccine, fuck them. I don't want to hear them yell about Khalil. And like clockwork, some fucking left-wing, ass-licking, boot-licking, authoritarian piece of shit goes, oh, so you're saying protesters don't have rights? That's what you're saying. You're saying protesters don't have rights. See you, Cap, my Cap. Fuck you. So fucking tired of this. So tired of it. You're indirectly giving advice by telling people, hey, I don't know what to do. Make up your own mind. Go to Duck. That's indirectly giving advice. Why are we talking about COVID? It's a long time ago. Let's talk about January 6th. I know you're not telling me not to be rude. I'll be as rude as I want. I'm so tired of these people. Just forget that we're wrong on the most... I would argue that in my lifetime, COVID is the government's reactions to COVID was the most significant government overreach that has negatively affected my life by a long shot. I'm tired of people telling me it's time to move on. I'm tired of it. Every day we find more evidence. Well, yeah, it turns out that you were lied to, but what can you do? Can't we talk about something else? How many times will it happen that in real time you're asking for it, great. Enjoy your 10-second timeout. Yeah, Libertarian Party. I was on this website above Top Secret, and all these people I got to know for like months or years, I mean. Constitutional conservatives, they were like always talking about the Constitution. They're giving me shit during COVID. 15 days to slow the spread. Come on, Rob. That was the real black pill. Of course, the big government fucking socialist lefties that want to control every aspect of your life, of course they chomped at the bit. Yes, lock them down. They're non-essential. Don't let them leave their homes. Take their children from them. But it was the conservatives, the libertarians, the constitutionalists that were like, well, yeah, we have to. What do you mean they won't be remembered kindly by history? Who writes history? 20 years from now, we'll be arguing about, did Don Jr. meet with that Russian lawyer in fucking that restaurant? And COVID will be a fucking afterthought. Just like Vietnam. Yeah, on one hand, we're like, Vietnam was kind of a boondoggle, but anybody suffer any real consequences that forced it? Or the Iraq War? Or Libya? Yeah, it's nice to think history won't remember them fondly. The truth is history won't remember them. That's the truth. People like me and you will be telling our grandkids, these fucking assholes. They'll be like, yeah, whatever, Grandpa. Sure. There's never consequences for these people. Ever. Well, I agree. I think Trump's doing pretty good and we shouldn't relent. But we'll see. All right. That about wraps it up for tonight's show. Tomorrow, we'll talk about something that's not COVID related so HN could be good. I didn't ban anyone permanently. The one guy pissed me off, Captain. I gave a 24-hour ban. So he can come back on tomorrow night and bitch. And then the other guy got a 10-second ban, prick. But I appreciate you all. I really do. Sorry for audio issues tonight. Tomorrow I'm going to try to use StreamYard to stream, so it should be a little different. Everyone who financially donated, thank you so much. I do appreciate that. The theme for tonight is, once more proof that the same people that censored you, that want to censor you now, that claim that they're morally superior and they're right, and how dare you question them, turns out they fucking lied and censored you about the origins of COVID. And they'll do it again. They'll do it about Ukraine. They'll do it about Libya. They'll do it about whatever issue. They'll do it about deportations. They're going to do it about, how many stories will you hear about? This 8-year-old died. This 8-year-old died because Trump stopped sending money for AIDS and he died. No. All bullshit. Now that, presumably, if we stop sending billions of dollars, 95%, which goes for corrupt things, but 5% goes to good things, could the people that are negatively affected by that 5% be harmed? Sure. If we deport people, could they get harmed back home? And will that be a big story that people will try to blow up? Sure. What's the alternative? well, we should have just sent that money to AIDS for that one kid. We should have sent them. By the way, they jump on this, right? Oh, this one kid did. How many people? Where's the fucking stories about the lockdowns that killed people? Where's that? What, did I miss those stories? Oh, when it's policies that you fucking cheer for that were draconian and harmful, all of a sudden you're not that interested in covering the lives ruined by it. But boy, oh boy, if someone's trying to stop the perpetual downward spiral into forever debt that our country's going in, that all of our children will pay the price. By the way, once the United States goes bankrupt and we have austerity measures in the United States because we keep spending these insane fucking deficits over and over, how much money for AIDS, HIV medication do you think we'll be sending to Africa then? How many kids do you think will die then? Just curious. But, all right, I'm getting off into another subject. So we will see you all. Gizmo, thanks for the $2, man. Says good night. Thank you. I appreciate it. We will see you all tomorrow around 7 p.m. Eastern, probably a couple minutes after that. Thank you so much, everyone. As always, have a good one.